Hello and welcome back to Matt's Automotive Channel. Today we're going to take a break from the brakes because we've ordered some new rotors and pads, just waiting for those to come in. And at this point, the brake rebuild is completely done. And we are still waiting for parts to come in for the transmission. So I think we're going to turn our attention to the rear main seal and the oil pan that's leaking. Now I know that removing the oil pan can be a real problem, at least when the transmission is in. With the transmission in, you normally either have to drop the K-member or at least lower it and raise the motor. But supposedly, from what I hear, with the transmission out, it's pretty easy just to undo those bolts and then slide the pan back. So we'll give that a try and see if that's actually true. And as you can see, this oil pan is very dirty. And so is the transmission housing. So I think once we get the oil pan out, we'll go ahead and clean both of those up. Now, if you may have noticed, I've already unbolted the starter. Let's start here. We're draining the oil. This is a 13 mm. Now before I pulled the drain plug, I did notice a little bit of oil leaking around this seal here. So before we fill the thing with new oil, we'll be sure to get a new gasket here and replace this. Now that the oil is drained, we can start pulling the oil pan bolts. For some of these, you'll need to use some flexies. It's just kind of tight. Now that we got the oil pan bolts out, it looks like there may be some interference between the oil filter and the oil pan housing. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the oil filter. All right, let's see if we can just hammer this thing off. There we go. There we go. Okay, I don't know if we'll be able to slide this back or not. Let's give it a shot. Does not look like it. I think the oil pickup tube is what's causing the problem there. Actually, it's not the oil pickup tube. It's the fact that, so I'll try to show you in here. There's the oil pickup tube right there. That's not what the problem is. If we come around to this side, the problem is the K-member just does not allow the pan to come down far enough for it to clear this area right here. That's the problem. So we're gonna have to raise the motor. I guess that's okay because we're gonna replace the motor mounts anyway. I put an engine support brace up here, and what I'm gonna do is loosen one of the motor mounts, probably on the passenger side, because most of the clearance issues are on this side where the pickup tube is. I'm gonna remove the nut for the motor mount here, and then jack this side up. Hopefully that will provide enough clearance to pull that pan out. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I did try to tilt the motor back. I lifted the front of the motor and did tilt it, but it still did not provide adequate clearance to get the pan out. So that does not work. Now the reason I'm not taking the other motor mount off completely is because the only thing holding that motor in is basically that motor mount. Normally when you do this, you would have the transmission in supporting the back of the motor, but we don't have that luxury right now. So we have to be real careful when we start pulling this up and make sure that the motor is fully supported and isn't gonna fall. All right, up top, I use this engine support brace, and I took off one of the nuts to the header, and I actually ended up using the third one back because it's most lined up with the motor mount. Did the same thing on that side. I had to take the intake out to do it. But anyway, I got chains on both sides, Now I got the nut for the motor mount off on the driver's side, so I'm going to just start slowly lifting this and then continuously check underneath and see if we have enough clearance to pull the pan out. One of my concerns is when lifting the motor is this chain digging into the side of this valve cover. So I put a towel here to minimize any kind of damage or interference between the chain and that valve cover. All right, I keep lifting the motor. Okay, let's check it again. See if we have enough clearance now for the pan to come out. All right, let's give it a shot, see if this pan will come out. We definitely have more clearance now. There we go. We got it. All right, let's take a look at the inside of this oil pan and see if we find anything unusual. Actually, it's pretty decent. A little bit of sludgy stuff down there at the bottom, but I don't see any metal flakes. Also, I do not see a gasket on this surface or on the bottom of the motor here. It looks like this is completely sealed using RTV. All right, since we have the driver's side of the motor lifted up, it would be a good time to go ahead and replace the motor mount. So this one here is going to be for the driver's side. So let's do that. All right, on the back side, looks like we just got these two guys. Let's go ahead and remove these. All right, and then on the front side of the motor mount, there'll be two more, but it looks like this wiring harness here is kind of blocking access, so we'll have to pull this nut here and move the harness out of the way. Removed, we can go ahead and move that wiring harness out of the way. And there reveals the other two motor mount bolts that we need to remove. All right, now that we get all the bolts out, hopefully the engine's up high enough we can just remove this. If not, I might have to jack it up a little more. Oh, but not quite enough. Let's move her up a little bit more. Okay, let's hope that's enough. There we go. It's out. All right, now that we got the motor mount out, we'll compare it with the new one, see if they look the same. Actually, I think I got the wrong side here. Let me grab the other one. This is probably for the passenger side. All right, I grabbed the other one. This is the one that we need. Those match up. And now we need to transfer this metal piece over to the other one. There we are. And I'm going to clean that up and then we'll transfer it over to this one. Okay, I got the plate cleaned up a little bit. This one does indicate that it's on the left side with a little L here. I don't think you can really put this on wrong. Only one way it's going to go. That's obviously not right. So the stud goes through the big hole here. And if you look how this is made, I think this goes in and then this side will snap in. All right, so let's just snap her in. We'll put this into the groove here. Make sure that everything lines up there. And then just push this on until it snaps in. And there we go. Put the new one in. Now that the motor mount's sitting in there, let's go ahead and lower the motor again. Then we can bolt it back up. All right, now I'll just torque the bolts down the spec. And then let's lower the motor back down and then we'll put the motor mount nut back on. Well, we'll just put it on loosely because we're going to raise the other side and change that motor mount. So this should be lowering back down. All right, for the time being, I'm not going to re-secure this wiring harness bracket because it will interfere with trying to clean up the mating surface here for the oil pan. And so anyway, let's repeat the same process for this side, and we'll replace this motor mount on the right side. All right, so far we got both motor mounts replaced, left and right, and we got the oil pan out. So let's give this a good cleaning along with the transmission housing. Well, taking a closer look at where the oil pan gasket meets up with the motor. On the front side of the motor here, this is just all RTV. Of course, it's all RTV on the flat portions, but on the rear side, where it's curved, there is a gasket here. And this is where the failure was as well. So I'm gonna have to pull that gasket off, and we'll have to order up a new one. All right, so let's go ahead and pull this little seal out. As you saw when I pulled the oil pan out, it was still a very tight fit, even though I raised the motor. After looking at this a little closer here, it looks like I can get another inch or so of clearance just by disconnecting the steering rack and then dropping it down. If we look here on the back side, you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the steering rack, and look at all the clearance that we give up having that in place. So I think I'm gonna just drop that, and then we'll see how well the oil pan fits. The reason I'm concerned is once I have RTV on the oil pan, I don't want the RTV hitting this and wrecking the bead that I put around the oil pan. So I want to just be able to put it in there nice and smooth, and then move the whole thing just straight up for a nice fit. Now, in order to remove the steering rack, or at least move it, we need to take these two nuts off, this one and this one. And then of course the steering rack is also held on by some lines, but these are flexible, so we'll be able to lower it down, then hang it from rope or something. And then the other connection here is where the steering shaft hooks up to it. So we'll just take out this one bolt, pull it, and then we should be able to move the steering rack out and then drop her down. All right, these bolts that hold the steering rack on go way back. They're a very long bolt, and as you start turning the knot in the front, it might twist the whole bolt, so you may have to hold it with a wrench on the back side. And you can see how long these bolts are. All right, the steering column bolt is just a 13 mm. And then the steering shaft should just lift away. Maybe with just a slight amount of persuasion. There we go. All right, now we should be able to slide the rack off these dowels here. All right, I got a little bungee cord here, so once you pull the rack off, pull the rack off, we should be able to support it using the bungee. Okay. Okay, that should work now. Okay, now we definitely have some more space up here to work with. Okay, now with the steering rack out of the way, let's see how easy it's going to be to get this oil pan in. So yeah, my fear was I got RTV all the way around here. I didn't want to be banging it on stuff and screwing up the beads. So let's see. Look at that. That's without lowering or raising the motor. just getting the steering rack out of the way makes all the difference in the world. So great, that gives us so much room to work with. It's gonna make it much easier. All right, time to get these mating surfaces cleaned up and get all the old RTV off. One thing that really helps in doing so is this Permatex gasket remover. You just basically brush it on and let it sit for a bit, and then when you try to scrape this off, it comes off much easier. So just shake the can here, you push on this, got a little brush, and so just spread it around and come back in about 10-15 minutes, and this our old RTV will come off much easier. About 30 minutes later, wipe this down. This stuff should come off a lot easier now when scraping it. I'm going to use a wire wheel on it. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull the rear main seal out. And I found the easiest way to get these out is to drill a little small hole right into the side of the rear main seal. A screw in, and then we'll use the screw to pull the rear main out. There we go. Just like that. Now that the rear main seal is out, it's important to get all the oil and debris out of these, out of the groove here. And so I would like to use lighter fluid. It's a good solvent and will dissolve the oil. So I go ahead and put some of that on the rag and then just kind of wipe it around here. Right, before installing the rear main seal, you want to take a little bit of oil and then lubricate the inside of this ring here. Now we'll go ahead and put the seal over the output shaft here, the crank shaft, and make sure that lip doesn't get bound and pushed forward. So you have to be just real careful about that. A little plastic piece I'll kind of push in on the seal here as I move around. Make sure that seals and doesn't get bound up there. Okay, there we go. Okay, the inner portion of the seal looks good. So then we'll tap it around the edges slowly, bit by bit, and work our way around until we have it fully seated. And when you use something to pound it in, make sure that the diameter is larger than the seal itself. That way you don't push it in too far. So this will bottom out on the edge of this here so that the seal is flush. And you can hear the sound change as we bottom out because this metal is hitting the side here. So we know that it's flush. So I kind of want to hear that sound all the way around. Now let's continue cleaning up the mating surface here. And what I like to do is, again, I use a solvent. I use like lighter fluid, and put a little bit on the rag, and then just work your way around and make sure everything's nice and smooth. And keep doing this until you see no more dirt coming off. Then you know it's completely clean and free of debris and oil. All right, we got the engine side cleaned up pretty well. So now let's make sure that this is cleaned up really well. Now, as clean as this looks, it's deceiving. I'll show you. I got a brand new towel here. Put a little bit of lighter fluid on it. Rub it around. And look at all that dirt. That's going to compromise the seal between the RTV and the pan. So we need to keep doing this until we can detect no more dirt on this pan. And then we can go ahead and seal it with the RTV. I did the same thing on the motor side. It's kind of a lengthy, time-consuming, boring process, but this is not a place to take a shortcut. If you take a shortcut here, you're going to be doing this job again, and that's way more work than just making sure you got it right the first time. Here's the end seal for the oil pan, and this is, first of all, the kit comes with 2 tubes of RTV, and then of course the seal itself. An important thing to note with this kit here is if you look at the instructions, it says important that this end seal must be installed dry without any chemical adhesion. Okay, so the end seal goes right here under the bearing cap, and it's to be installed dry. I've definitely got this all cleaned up. There's no oil or debris left in there. So we'll go ahead and just go ahead and push this in. There we go. And that is to be left just as is. Now I'm not only cleaning up the heads, but also the threads as well. A lot of times RTV gets stuck in the threads here, and I want to make sure I get good accurate torque readings when I torque it back down. So I make sure to get all these threads here cleaned up too. There we go, much better. Here's an example of a bolt that has a lot of RTV left on it. So when you torque that down, obviously that's going to interfere with your torque reading. All the bolts are now cleaned up. There's a total of 15 of them, and 2 of them are longer, which are going to go on the end just under the rear main seal. These bolts are going to get torqued in 2 different stages, first to 44 inch-pounds and then 89 inch-pounds. This is the end where we're going to start, and then we're going to crisscross back and forth, and then 44 inch-pounds all the way down, and then we'll come back here and then do the 89 inch-pounds. All right, we got them all torqued down to 44 inch-pounds. Now we need to go back and do 89 inch-pound. All right, so we got the oil pan back up and the remain seal. So the only thing left to do is put the steering rack back on. These 2 bolts here, they get torqued to 35 pound-feet. And then we got to reconnect the steering shaft. And that bolt there is going to get torqued to 25 pound-feet. And since we didn't have to lift the motor, I can go ahead and torque the motor mounts back down. And these guys here are 85 pound-feet. Well, hopefully these efforts have taken care of our oil leak. And we'll go ahead and continue now finishing up the brakes. We got new pads and motors, and we rebuilt the calipers, so I'll put those on next, and then we'll turn our attention back to the transmission and finish it up. So anyway, catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.